since we were last here at this space. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of the Chalk Talk family and tribe. And there's a lot to get to, right? So NFL training camps are in full swing. Everybody has started practicing in pads. So we're going to talk a little bit about NFL training camps. But this week, the NBA playoffs got underway. They started yesterday. Tonight, the Houston Rockets will play, I won't say play host because they're all in the bubble, so there's no home court advantage. Will play the Oklahoma City Thunder in round one of those playoffs. Russell Westbrook will not play tonight. I think he was due to get an MRI yesterday when the media met with Mike D'Antoni to kind of get an update on how he's coming along. But they have a tall task at hand. And so we're going to talk about the Rockets matchup tonight with the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Houston Texans are practicing in the bubble. They are making their way towards the season opener, September the 10th in Kansas City, preparing for that. So everything's different now, right? Practicing under these kind of conditions. And while there is not a bubble for the National Football League, they're trying to keep the players and staff as safe as possible. So there's not as much access in person. There's no fans. There are no fans around. There's limited media on site, and all that makes sense. So there's a lot that's different, but we are getting a chance to do some interviews. They're sharing what they would allow us to see via a team pool camera, and we're getting access to Coach O'Brien and certain players a few times a week or several times a week. So that continues to evolve as they're really just trying to figure this whole thing out. So I will keep you posted on that. And of course, there's Major League Baseball. Over the weekend, the Houston Astros swept the Seattle Mariners. And, hopefully baseball will get through the season. The Astros have had a lot of injuries. Last week, they put Mike Brantley on the DL. They've had pitchers go out. They got Yordan Alvarez back, the Rookie of the Year, and then he missed a start because of some ailments. So there's just a lot happening. And then, of course, last week we did a big show. We talked a lot about college football. Special thanks to Coach Mike Haywood, who always comes on and keeps us up to date and is so connected and involved on the college football scene, even though he's not currently coaching. He has relationships with a lot of the coaches and a lot of the leaders. And he talked about Mike Emmert, who I've said, lacks leadership and not just me, I think others too, that the NCAA is not doing enough. And as he explained it, there is only so much that Emmert can do. And he felt like he's, a pretty good leader. But there are a lot of moving targets. Over the weekend, I wanted to share something that I got about. So here's another thing that I learned. The NCAA does not have the authority of the Big Five to make the decision to play or not to play. And so President Emmert was in the meeting with presidents of the universities and the commissioners, but the NCAA can't make that decision unilaterally. And so I'd love for you to weigh in, drop it in the chat and let me know. The conversation has been whether or not, if there was a czar, so to speak, if there was a commissioner of the NCAA, like there is in the professional sports, would that make a difference? And would they be able to unilaterally make decisions across the board? Now it's really done by commissioners of conferences. We saw early on that the SWAC really took the lead and said, we're not having fall sports. It's just too dangerous. We're not going to take that chance. And they canceled it early. We're going to move everything to the spring. And while now, we've since we last visited, they were meeting last week actually during the show. The Pac-10, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 have said, no football. Players have come out and said, listen, we want to play. They started a petition, the quarterback one of the players from Ohio State, and got over 50,000 signatures. And so what I would say to that is that the passion is not really the question, right? Of course they're passionate and they want to play. But is it really safe? Nick Saban said last week, and other coaches have said, well, these players are actually safer here on campus playing football than they may be someplace else. And there have been arguments about that. Like, well, yeah, because if you have them all there and, they're getting tested, they're being kept in they're in their dorms or, player apartments or whatever their situations may be, depending on the school and the campus. But if they're going to school and they're on campus with other students, is that safer? Because what we've seen across the board are campuses and photos with a lot of young people in big crowds, kind of doing what they do, not being socially distanced, not practicing social distancing, and not wearing masks. So how does that work? Can you say, well, the football players will all just take classes online, and then so that they're not interacting with other players on campus? I just think there's so many unanswered questions as it relates to this coronavirus and as it relates to risk and dangers. It's just chaos, right? It is out of control. That we can probably agree on. And then let's talk about our kids going back to school. North Carolina has now said, UNC, the University of North Carolina, said, nope, we're not going to have in-person classes. But it took, 120 positive tests to say, oh, wait, cases that they know of to say, yeah, we're going to just move everything online. It's almost as though people have to get slapped on the hand before they say, oh, ouch, that hurts. Maybe we shouldn't do this. This is what chaos and a lack of leadership looks like, if you've ever really wondered about that. So there are just so many moving parts. And so there's a few things I'm going to remind you guys of, because here on this show, I like to give us things to do. We have an election this fall. And every time there's an election, I know there are people who will say, well, people always say this is the most important elections of our life. If you are living and breathing right now, then you know this to be true. You've seen it. If you have experienced 2020 to this point, then you've seen the pandemic. Now, maybe it hasn't personally affected you. No one in your family, none of your friends, none of the people in your circle have been impacted or infected by the coronavirus, and that's great. Hopefully you haven't suffered a loss. So many people have. People without pre-existing conditions, people with pre-existing conditions, kids are being impacted by this virus. So what we know is the virus is real, okay? And we know that it's not getting better. Like other countries around the world that got their first diagnoses around the same time we did here in the US, they're back to, kind of life somewhat as normal. They're not having to wear masks. They've moved beyond these rapid rates of infection. And here in this country, the numbers just keep getting worse. And they're probably worse than what we even see because testing has slowed. Okay. So I'm going to encourage you all to continue to practice social distancing, wash your hands, right? And wear your mask. And while you're doing all that, make sure you're registered to vote. Now, if you just think you're registered, but you're not sure, check, go online, find out, make sure that you are registered to vote. All right, we're going to get to what's happening with the NFL. I'm going to let you hear from James Harden and Mike D'Antoni. I'm even going to let you hear from Michelle Obama. But this is important. This is necessary, right? And I'm always encouraging you guys to know who represents you, know who's going to be on your ballot, get the information for yourself. I share information here, but make sure that you do your own research. Find out who makes sense to represent you and your family. All right. But things have got to change. This chaos cannot continue for another 4 years. Right. So I'm talking beyond just local politics. I'm talking all of it. We've got to have people in office that we can hold accountable. Now, we can't even really hold them accountable because we have one party that is just simply saying it doesn't matter what the president does, we are going to support him. And as long as we control the Senate, there's nothing you can do because the Senate has a final say in so much. That's a problem. So Those of you across the country that are voting on senators this fall, I need you to keep that in mind. Is your senator providing the kind of representation that matters for you and your community and for your family? And if your answer is no, then you might want to vote for somebody else. How about that? Okay. And don't get caught up in, well, I live in a red state, it doesn't matter. It does matter. Times are changing, things are changing, and yeah, vote them out. If you don't want to work for the people, then the people shouldn't keep paying you. You shouldn't keep getting a salary because they're still getting paid during the pandemic. They still have great health benefits that many of us don't have. And if we have them, it costs an arm and a leg, or two legs and a couple of feet and hands. Vote them out. Okay? But you can't do that if you're not registered. You got to be registered 30 days before the election. Just go get registered now. Don't push it close. Make sure you're registered. It's easy. It doesn't take long. Get registered. And make sure you fill out the census. Make sure that you're counted by the census. Listen, people, it's important. It is how resources are allocated. And yes, they know where we are, but it's easy to say, well, this community doesn't need much because according to our census, they have 10 people that live in this neighborhood. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but you get my point. The census matters in terms of resources for communities. It also matters when you talk about gerrymandering and how the political lines are drawn for when it comes to districts and elections and representation. All of that is based on the census numbers. It is done every 10 years. So already this administration is saying, we're going to shorten the time for when we'll just wrap this census thing up. They don't want you to be counted. And always think about this. If they don't want you to be counted, why is that? It must matter. And if your vote didn't count, they wouldn't be trying so hard to keep you from having a vote, right? So I encourage you to make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure that you have completed your census. It takes like 5 minutes. It's really quick and easy. Make sure you and everybody in your household, everybody you know, has filled out the census. It will not affect your immigration status for those of you who are concerned about, this will make them, concerned about my immigration status. It will not. But resources matter. And so we need to be counted. Everybody needs to be counted. Fill out the census. It's important. Register to vote. And go ahead, if you're in a state that allows mail-in ballots, or if you're going to vote absentee, request those ballots today. Get them early, fill them out, send them back in, and then make sure that they will receive. So my mom votes absentee, and my mom is 89 years old. And so she will get her ballot, and instead of mailing it in, and we did this last time in the primary, in a runoff here in Texas, I guess a month or so ago, she got it so late that my sister dropped it off at the ballot, at the poll. We're going to do that this time anyway. You can drop it off with county clerk courthouses. You can drop it off at the polling place. And just know, you know what? This time we may just have to be in some lines. It is so worth it. It is so worth it so that we can try to rebuild and get some real leadership so we can get a pandemic office again, get this virus under control, get our, talk about economy. What's the biggest thing hurting the economy right now? The pandemic. And yeah, maybe you have a 401k that's doing well, but you can't go anywhere and enjoy it, right? You can't even really go to other countries because they don't want us, right? It's like we have the plague. So make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you get your ballots early and you get them in early. If you live in a state where early voting exists, vote early. Vote early. The earlier we can get votes in, the better. We know it's going to be shenanigans. This current president has already told us, and then he's already said, if I lose, it was rigged. But if he wins, it's okay. Come on, y'all. I am excited about the ticket because it's somebody somebody competent and compassionate, right? Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. And so we need, and here's the other thing, we also know that we will have access to them. They will listen. We've seen that. They're competent, they're human, they're compassionate, they're smart, they have a plan, they've talked about the plan, they have some character. It's not going to just be a bunch of old white rich men who are getting richer off the backs of Americans, because that's really what Donald Trump is about. Let's be clear. I mean, and if that's okay with you, it's not okay with me. I'm not okay with that. Are you okay with Betsy DeVos being the Secretary of Education? Like, is this who you want to try to get education back on track after the pandemic? This woman? Do you want Ben Carson to be over HUD, Housing and Urban Development, which after the pandemic, there are going to be so many people who lost their homes. There are going to be more people who are homeless because they couldn't afford to pay their rent and mortgages. And this is who you want in charge? See, it's not just about Donald Trump. It is about all of the people around him. So, listen, from now until the election, I'm going to remind you and encourage you of our rights and our responsibilities. We have both. So now we're going to talk about a little bit of sports. All right. So it is all relevant. Today is the first day of the playoffs for the Houston Rockets. They play the Oklahoma City Thunder tonight. And, the Rockets are going to be without Russ Westbrook. They're going to miss him, right? He's a huge part of what this team does, especially as they, play the small ball. Their guards are important. He's one of those. He's just an integral part of this team. So last night, here are the games that were played last night. The Jazz and the Nuggets are playing. The Nuggets won that game 135 to 125. The Nuggets are the 3 seed. The Jazz are the 6 seed. The Nets and the Raptors, of course, are the defending champions. The Raptors won that game 134 to 110. And then the Celtics and the 76ers, that rivalry. In the East, the Celtics are the 3rd seed. The 76ers are the 6th seed. 109 to 101 was the final of that game last night, with the Celtics winning game 1. And then the final game, which is a West game, which is if you saw that game, you might have been a little bit annoyed. The Mavericks lost to the Clippers 110 to 118. The Clippers are the 2 seed. The Mavericks are the 7 seed. But the big part of that game was that Kristaps Porzingis was tossed for 2 technicals on some real questionable kind of shady-like calls that you just don't make those calls at this point in the season. In the bubble, come on, NBA refs. That's what happened last night. So today, here are the games on the schedule today. So in about an hour, the Magic play the Bucks. The Bucks are the top seed, have the overall best record, the top seed in the East. They play the Orlando Magic, followed by the Heat and the Pacers. They're 4 and 5. The Heat's the 4 seed. The Heat is the 5 seed. The Pacers are the 4th seed. Miami's a 4.5 point favorite in that game. Milwaukee's a 13.5 point favorite. And then the later game is the Rockets and the Thunder. That game is at 5:30. OKC has a 1.5 point. Is favored by 1.5. The Rockets are the 4th seed. The Thunder, the 5th seed. And then the later game starts at 8 o'clock. The Trailblazers and the Lakers. Of course, the Lakers are the top seed in the West, and the Trailblazers won the play-in game against Memphis on Saturday. So they got the 8th seed. The Lakers are 6.5 point favorites. I'm expecting that to be a really good series. And listen, if you've been watching any of the basketball in the bubble, if you've been watching the play of Dame Lillard, he's been nothing short of amazing. Carmelo Anthony has reminded us that, you know what? Yeah, his time wasn't quite up yet. He should have been on a roster. Like, he should have been on somebody's roster before now. But they don't really play any defense. So, while the Lakers have not been playing their best ball, in the bubble, I still expect the Lakers to win that. But I think that series could go 6 games, maybe even 7. Who knows? But that should be a good series. So those are all the games that are scheduled tonight. And I'll let you hear. So Mike D'Antoni yesterday, when we talked with him, one of the questions somebody asked him was about the decision to go to the small ball kind of lineup, or the small ball kind of a roster, if you will. Remember, they traded Clint Capella before the pandemic. And so this is Mike D'Antoni. Let me see if it's him. Nope, that's not the one. Hang on. I want to make sure I get you. Okay. So I'm going to let you hear from Mike D'Antoni. All right, hang on a second. Why are you being difficult this morning with giving me my... Okay, let's see. Hang on.
And, why not go all in? We thought that by the analytics and numbers that our best lineup was going small. If we could do some trades and add another perimeter guy like Robert Covington to the mix, would even enhance the possibilities even more. So it's just, kind of working through that issue, not totally knowing, but once we made the decision to go all in and thinking, and we still think this is the best way to play this team. And I know that a lot of people will say, well, you do this, do that. And at the end of the day, maybe we couldn't get it done. But this is the best way to try to get it done. And I'm fully confident. I think we can for sure. I know we can win this way. We just have to play well, come up with big plays, and persevere through being tired and having other guys step up other than James. And now with Russell out, try to get him back. But Eric has to come up huge. Daniel House has to, he has to play a lot of playoffs. He has to be big and go forward on that. But I don't think there's any doubt in the organization that this is the best way to go. Collectively trying to.
So that was Mike D'Antoni yesterday, answering the question about why they decided to go to this kind of a lineup where they're playing in small ball. And you heard him say it. He thinks they thought when they made the decision that this was the best way for them to play. This gives them their best chance to win. And when we say win, we're talking about winning a championship. So what needs to happen tonight, right? This Houston Rockets team is going to be missing, as we said, Russell Westbrook. We don't know when Russ is going to get back. But what we do know is that they've got some other people on the team that we saw step up. And we saw it step up, and that was good before the playoffs started, because it gives you a sense of the other people, right? I was watching earlier, and Mario Elie tweeted something. He said, who's going to be the person today? Like, where is he? He talked about with Russ out, who else? Somebody has to step up big. Who is it? And he mentioned Jeff Green. And so those are Jeff Green and Daniel House. That's exactly what, you know, Mike D'Antoni said. I think Mario said Eric Gordon. But they've got some other options. And so with Russ out, Gordon and Green are the two people that Mario Elie said he thought need to really step up. I agree. But think about the play we've seen great play from an Austin Rivers, right? We saw him lead the way one day last week. We've seen, of course, Green. I think everybody puts Green in the mix because he's come in and what he's been able to do and how he's been able to shoot it, in addition to his defense. Eric Gordon, who's getting back in the flow of things after, being out and being a little banged up. So I think there's a lot of options and opportunities, if you will, for this Rockets team to be successful. But here's what we know. They're going to have to get great play off the bench. And someone asked yesterday in our media availability, PJ Tucker, what kind of center does he rather match up against? Which I'm always baffled by those questions. He said, I go to play. I have to approach the game the same way all the time. I don't really look at it whether, it's a big guy, it's a traditional guy, it's like an Adams. I have to go in and do what I play. I mean, he's going to play hard. He's going to be scrappy. He's going to guard the ball. That's what he does. And then, he can shoot it as well. But this Rockets team is going to have to be kind of clicking on all cylinders, and they're going to have to get some of these other role players to step up big. We've seen them do that, and so we're going to have to see that tonight if they're going to be successful. James Harden yesterday was asked about, let's see here. Oh man, that's not what I'm looking for. Let me get to where I can give you James Harden about what this team needs to do about facing the Oklahoma City Thunder and really the challenges that this team presents, right? Let me get to it, and let me bring you James Harden. Let me put him in the stream. And so I'm getting these off my, instead of getting them straight from the camera, I posted them to my.
They put together as a team. They obviously Chris, leads that team, and they're pretty well coached, and they play well as a team. They play hard, play together, and so they just know their identity, and they stick to that identity every game. And we're gonna have to beat them. They don't turn the ball over, a lot. So we're gonna have to be really, really solid defensively and offensively get our shots that we want, and just be solid throughout the course of the series.
Thank you.
They put together as.
That was James Harden on yesterday, and he talked about facing Oklahoma City. And like he said, they play together as a team. They play good defense, and listen, they're led by Chris Paul, who's had a really all-star-ish kind of season. He won't be the MVP kind of season. He's their MVP, but it will not be. Okay, I was looking at something from the NBA. Mike Conley is returned back to the campus, according to the Jazz. So it's going to be interesting, right? I'm going to jump off for a minute from talking about the NBA playoffs and jump over to Major League Baseball for a little. So here's what's happening in Major League Baseball. In the West, the Astros have pulled above 500. They're at 12-10. Of course, I mentioned they did sweep Seattle over the weekend. They have improved to 12-10. They're 6-4 in their last 10 games. They're 3.5 games behind Oakland in the West. Oakland is 16-7, right? So here, if the playoffs were to start like now, in the American League, you'd have the Yankees, you'd have Oakland, and you have Minnesota. And then in the wild card race, Houston's behind. So you have Tampa Bay, Cleveland, Baltimore, and then Houston. Houston is Houston and Baltimore are kind of tied for that third spot for the wild card. You have Tampa Bay, you have Cleveland, but it's really close. Like any of those teams, and even some teams below them, the wild card race is tight. And listen, we're only about a third of the way through the season, so we still have quite a bit of time to go. But it was just good to see the Astros kind of get some things going over the weekend. Kyle Tucker, who's been in a slump, had that walk-off homer on Sunday. So trying to see what their schedule is. So today, the Rockies are playing at Houston. There's a 2:00 game. And, nope. To start that schedule. Then they will be, I think they may be tomorrow night. So, yeah, it starts the series. So they play the Rockies tomorrow. Today, tomorrow, and I believe on Thursday, and on Thursday. So it's another 2:00 game on Thursday. So that's what's happening. I may try to go out to the game on Thursday because I have not been out to the stadium yet. But at any rate, I get to still listen to the coaches and talk to everybody. And here's some news from the NBA. Mike Conley, I mentioned that he's expected to return to the NBA bubble, and it's thought that he may clear quarantine and be able to play with the Jazz on Thursday night. So that's kind of what's happening around the NBA. That's what's happening in Major League Baseball. We'll just keep our eyes on what's happening there. And if we jump over to the National Football League, the teams are in pads, and so they're practicing now. And one of the focuses, I think, this year for a team like the Texans is, the O-line is together another year. They've got Laramie Tunzel, who's been at camp. He's been in whatever their off-season workouts were able to be because of the pandemic, instead of getting him right before the season last year. So the thought is that he will be in a much better position to be the kind of left tackle they expected him to be when they made that deal to bring him from Miami. And like he said, being around makes a huge difference. Getting to know Lamar, getting to know Deshaun better, getting his cadence down because it's different from what he'd been in the other places. So that is another a benefit for this Houston Texans team. I just don't know what it's going to look like yet. It's going to be really kind of weird, though. Hey, good morning, everybody. It's interesting. I don't know why I get these notations so late. Good morning, Charles. Welcome. Thank you for, as always, being a part of Chalk Talk. It's good to see you here. And Sylvia, my sister Sylvia, welcome. Thank you for being a part of Chalk Talk today. And make sure, guys, that you do please share the video so that we can continue to build this tribe in our Chalk Talk family. Can you imagine these huge NFL stadiums with no fans? Like what does NRG hold? 72,000 people? So no fans. And they're talking about it definitely in the first game of the season. But the Texans' first game will be on the road. They will play in Kansas City. But there's going to be no fans in the stadiums to start the season. So that's going to be something. The NBA, I think, although you can tell it's different, but because it's a smaller arena, they put in like those spaces and piped in some noise. And I just think the NBA has done a really good job. It's made the best of a situation that has just not been great. And it doesn't feel like there's home court advantage, but you do hear some of the noise, right? You hear some of it, you see some of the people that, they have the cutouts and so they've given a little bit. Like it is not at all like walking into an NBA arena. I get that. And I don't think anyone is saying that. It's much easier to even somewhat emulate it at the NBA level than it is with the NFL, just because of the size of the stadium, if nothing else. So that's going to be really interesting. I was going to let you hear from Bill O'Brien. We got some sound from him yesterday, but I didn't cue it up in the right place. Actually, my computer just kind of crashed on me earlier. And so a lot of what I was going to do, I couldn't do. And so it's actually, I'm like, it's got to come on. I have my show. So technology is great, but it is also sometimes technology. So, but I'll post some of those things later in the day on my IG page. So make sure you're following me on kim.y.davis. And I also post it here on Facebook and on Twitter. But I had some sound from them, and I'll have some sound from their after practice today, just to kind of let you hear a little bit from some of the players and from Bill O'Brien. And they're just, they got out in the grass yesterday. They'd been inside in the turf, but they got outside yesterday, and he said it was good to be out there. And hopefully I'll get in rotation because they are allowing. I asked about getting to go to training camp, and the NFL has really clamped down on who has access and who can be in the facility. And so they have these tiers. And so the tier 2 people are like beat writers, members of the Professional Football Writers Association, probably team broadcasters and radio stations that have the broadcast of team games. So 610 and Channel 13. But they are going to allow some others to kind of rotate in. So hopefully I will be one of those 3 that gets rotated in on one of the days. But these are different times, so I can't really fault them for that. But hopefully I will make the rotation. I'll make the rotation and actually get to check out a training camp day. It's so odd to not be able to see camp, but those are the times we're living in. Again, let me hear from you about your thoughts about college football. I mean, that is still a very uncertain and a very fluid situation about what's going to happen with colleges and universities. But here's one thing I know to be true. I think it's true. I believe this. It's got to be very difficult moving forward to argue against compensating players financially beyond the scholarship. You want to say, well, it will affect their amateur status. Really? Because that's a whole lot of pressure you're putting on these young men to play to save a system that really doesn't benefit them. When you look at, not in the same way that it benefits the coaches and the universities and the places that really make all the money and gain the power. I mean, think about who makes the most money in a state. It's not the governor, it's none of the mayors, it's the football coaches, right? In this state, it's probably Jimbo Fisher in terms of a state employee. And he's a head coach in my alma mater, Texas A&M University. It is a system that has been lopsided for a long time, and it just kind of puts it front and center, and it's going to make it difficult, I think, when this ongoing conversation about whether or not to compensate players and why it should impact their amateur status. 2 things can be true. They can be college athletes, and you can find a way to compensate them because you can't do it without them. And they're the ones who have to be at risk to save these systems. But it's all going to look different on the other side. I don't know what it's going to look like, but like so many things post-pandemic, it is going to look different. I promised you a little bit about the convention. I want to let you hear from my first lady, who did speak last night. And let me see here. Oh, wait. Michelle Obama. I'm gonna grab it from the screen. I'm not gonna play all of her speech, obviously, but I do want to play a portion of it. And
possibly can. Donald Trump is the wrong president for our country. He has had more than enough time to prove that he can do the job, but he is clearly in over his head. He cannot meet this moment. He simply cannot be who we need him to be for us. It is what it is. Now, I understand that my message won't be heard by some people We live in a nation that is deeply divided, and I am a Black woman speaking at the Democratic Convention. But enough of you know me by now. You know that I tell you exactly what I'm feeling. You know I hate politics, but you also know that I care about this nation. You know how much I care about all of our children. So if you take one thing from my words tonight, it is this. If you think things cannot possibly get worse, trust me, they can and they will if we don't make a change in this election. If we have any hope of ending this chaos, we have got to vote for Joe Biden like our lives depend on it. I know Joe. He is a profoundly decent man, guided by faith. He was a terrific vice president. He knows what it takes to rescue an economy, beat back a pandemic, and lead our country. And he listens. He will tell the truth and trust science. He will make smart plans and manage a good team. And he will govern as someone who's lived a life that the rest of us can recognize. When he was a kid, Joe's father lost his job. When he was a young senator, Joe lost his wife and his baby daughter. And when he was vice president, he lost his beloved son. So Joe knows the anguish of sitting at a table with an empty chair, which is why he gives his time so freely to grieving parents. Joe knows what it's like to struggle, which is why he gives his personal phone number to kids overcoming a stutter of their own. His life is a testament to getting back up.
And that was Michelle Obama last night at the, hang on a second, remember that. There we go, at the Democratic National Convention. And so she said a lot more, but she said, if you don't think things can get worse, they can, and they will, if we don't vote and make a change in November. So as we wind down today's show, I'm going to end it the way we started, reminding you about the importance of this election. And if you've heard it before, all I can tell you is we're living it. I mean, it's not just me telling you. I mean, what do you see? This all-out attack on the post office. Let's think about that for a moment. First of all, who works there? Like, my father was retired from the post office, but most of the people who work at the post office look like me, or maybe they're Hispanics or Asian. It is another attack on minorities, on brown and Black people. Okay, we may be the global majority, but there is an idea that we are the minority in this country. and one of the things that is scaring people like Donald Trump and the Republicans that support him is the fact that the face of the country is changing and the demographics are changing, and they're trying to hold on to the control, and they will do anything. He will do anything. He's even said it. He realizes that if people get to vote by mail, they will probably be voted out of office. So you're going to do this so that you can win. No regard for the people who need the Postal Service to get their checks, to pay their bills. Some people still use the post office. A lot of people do. They get their medicine. Veterans get their medicine by mail. Most senior citizens get their medicines by mail. Small businesses. Listen, I have a small business, and my popcorn business, I do most of that business by mail. And so the post office will impact that business. I mean, I have this show of my consulting company, but my popcorn business, that's really most of that is done by delivered and handled through mail. And that's the case for a lot of small business owners. That's the case for a lot of people who need medicine. And I'm told that there are some 600,000 people, veterans, who are employed by the post office. So once again, we're just going to kick the veterans to the curb. It is not a partisan institution. And here's the other thing. Lean in when I say this to you. The post office does not cost taxpayers money. It is not funded that way. Now, yes, there is money. They're asking for help because they need it, but this is not draining taxpayers. This is an institution that is necessary. And once again, this man in the office is trying to dismantle it for his own personal good. He don't need the post office, right? Most of us do. He'll go on about his way whenever he gets out of office. Hopefully it is in January, and live his life, and we'll be left with more shambles and crumbles to try to pick up and put back together, because we are in our feelings about, whether Kamala Harris is black enough, which is utterly ridiculous, or whether, Joe Biden is a decent person or not. Joe Biden, over the weekend, Donald Trump, unfortunately, lost his brother. His brother died, seems like suddenly, from just the reports. And Donald Trump, that's a loss. So condolences to him, because anybody that loses a family member, I hate to hear that. And Joe Biden came out and immediately offered his prayers and condolences. That's who he is, right? Of course, Donald Trump never acknowledged it, and but we don't do what's right because of what other people do. We do what's right because we know it's the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is to go get registered to vote, request your absentee ballot or your mail-in ballot, get it back in immediately. And I would keep putting pressure on your Congress people. In fact, I need to send a letter today. I haven't sent an email in probably almost a month to John Cornyn and Ted Cruz about this postal situation. Like, you guys had better save the post office. Like, stop it, okay? Y'all have let Donald Trump do a whole lot, but do not let him dismantle the post office. They're already removing sorters and picking up boxes around. It's just insanity. So, and then I went to look at the board of directors for the post office, because I need to follow up and reach out to each one of them. They're all white men, all of them. Y'all need to pay attention, okay? Stop it with the being in your feelings. I keep hearing people say black men won't support Kamala Harris. I'm gonna give black men more credit than that. I believe they will, because they're smart and they care about their families and their communities, and they care about themselves. And this man right here, he cares nothing about any of us. I'm not even going to mention the guy that's trying to be a spoiler, who's got names on his petition to get on the ballot, like, Daffy Duck. I mean, really? This is what we're doing? This is what world are we living in? Anyway, here's the good thing about it, y'all. I want to end on a positive note. The good thing is we can do something about all of this, because we have the power and the control and the ability. If we get registered, if we vote, if we go ahead and get counted by the census, we can do things differently. And you know what? Moving forward, we can start requesting things that matter to us. We can have an agenda that impacts our communities. We can ask for things that matter to us and our families. Don't just sit back and think people are going to give you something. That's not really how it works. We've seen that. So let's be better. Let's be different. Let's do more work. We can do this. I believe in all of us. And as always, I appreciate you being a part of Chalk Talk. Now, follow me. Of course, follow me here on Facebook. And follow me on Twitter, Kim Y. Davis, or as Indy Kalu calls me, Kimmy Davis. I will give you updates about the Rockets. I'll be posting some texts and stuff there. And anything else that comes across as newsworthy, I post a lot on Twitter. And then I'll post videos and interviews on Instagram. And you can follow me on Instagram at kim.y.davis. Charles, I would expect nothing less from you. He said, this one supports Kamala Harris, and it is an easy choice to make. Absolutely. It is an easy choice to make. She's smart, and she is, she went to Howard. Like, she's an AKA. She's a black woman. Not that, you have to do those things to be a black woman. That makes you one, but clearly she is. She's qualified. She's able to articulate things. And here's something else. When people talk about, I had to talked to a friend earlier this week. I moderated, was it this week or last? No, it was last week. I moderated a diversity panel. And afterwards, one of my friends who was actually a part of the audience was for the Media Alliance. And she called me and she was like, what do you think about Kamala Harris? And she's like, she is rough on black men. I said, where'd you get that from? Well, I said, so the reporter in me makes me look for things differently and look at things differently. It's not just what somebody says or I Google one thing and that's my answer. That's not research, okay? So the first thing we need to understand, and I just want to share this before I go, is that Kamala Harris was a prosecutor and their jobs were to put criminals in jail. That's what they do. That's their job. Now, if you tell me she was just going around to black men's houses and knocking on their door and having them picked up and put in jail for no reason, I got a problem with that, right? I don't think that's what happened. And if we are honest, like, I don't want people breaking in my house. I don't want people harming my family. I don't want to feel unsafe and in danger. And if somebody does something criminally to me or my family, yeah, I want them to go to jail. By the same token, here's the thing. I live in a condo community. I'm on the board of directors. And we have recently had some young kids that have been jumping over and coming into our pool. And this is a private condo community and making a lot of noise. And so the board, there was a conversation on the board about how to handle it. And so the board, they were like, well, it's breaking the law, we can call the police. So in that sense, I said, no, let's not call the police. Let's talk to them first. If they come again, if I'm here, I'll go out. I don't want to default to calling the police on these young kids about jumping over being in the pool. Now, they shouldn't be here, right? They shouldn't. But at the very least, we should talk to them and say, hey, listen, this is private property. You can't come here. And if you continue to come, it's going to be a problem. But we're not going to resort to just putting the police in these little boys' lives. Not on my watch, right? But what they are doing is wrong, but it doesn't deserve police intervention until it gets to a place where it's not controllable. I just don't believe it's going to get there. I think it can be de-escalated. I think if you tell them, listen, you can't come here. I mean, listen, all these kids are trying to find stuff to do. The public pools are closed. They don't have anywhere to go. I get all of that. Ask them to leave and tell them not to come back because you can't, it is trespassing. But yeah, I don't want them out there making all that noise either. But I also don't want the police called on them, right? So if we don't have a different voice, if I'm not on this board, because I'm the only person on the board that looks like me, there's 7 of us. And if I don't make that statement, the police are called on these young boys that are probably from the ages of about 8 to 14 to 15 years old. They don't need the police in their lives. I believe that and I said, listen, I'll go talk to them when they come back, call me. If I'm here, I'll hear them because I live near I live near where they were. But that's the kind of people that we need places. I'm not a prosecutor, I'm not a lawyer. But what I'm saying is, let's stop beating up on people for doing their jobs, and let's help them in ways that we can as a community, right? I mean, I don't want to be a part of saying, let's call the cops on these young Black kids and then be mad about what happens to them, right? No, let's not get to that point. And if we don't step in places where we can, we have those problems. That's why we have to be in the room. And I say that as I juxtapose it to Kamala Harris, because I've also heard about some things she did that were helpful as a prosecutor, where she, a lot of the drug charges, she tried to move into a drug court and drop some of those charges down to misdemeanors. And in terms of truancy, that was about trying to make sure that our kids went to school and get educated. You know, we've got to look beyond just the easy, she's a Black woman prosecutor, she's the devil. She married to a white man. I don't really care who she's married to. And until y'all get mad about all these Black men marrying white women, y'all need to miss me on that. It's for real. Okay? They can't be there's a whole lot of that happening. So if we're not going to judge on one side, don't judge on the other. and, you know, step up. And if you somebody that wanted to be married to her, be the man that she should want to marry. I don't know. Get your own life. I don't care who people marry. I really, really don't. And I like this about her. Charles says she lacks fear. We need to be in charge of cleaning the damage done to federal agencies. Absolutely. We have got to be in the room. We need somebody who understands how it works, the process. Listen, Kamala Harris wasn't my first choice. My first choice was Val Demings. And who is she? She's a former police chief. So, but I like Kamala Harris. I like the fact that she is fearless. She knows they're coming after her. She can handle it. I think that's really important. And you're right. That's why we need to be represented on every board and governing body, right? We're not in this administration. I'm just talking about my homeowners association. You know, I sit on some other boards, but every place we need to have some representation, because trust me, if I'm not on this board, they call the police on them kids. Okay, they do. They little behind shouldn't be over here. No, they should not. But they don't need the police in their lives. We don't know what kind of police gonna show up, how they gonna act. I mean, we have to be represented on every board and governing body. And in this administration, it is not happening. So there's so many reasons, you guys, to be energized and excited. So please register to vote. Make sure that you've been counted by the census. That's also really, really important. It's about resources. It's about the lines they draw for districts. It is about so many things that are important. And the resources are those that we deserve to have. But if we are not counted, we don't get them. It's as simple as that. All right. So listen, we're out of time for today. Thank you so much. I'll have a guest next week, but I'll wait to tell you who it is because, you know, things change a lot and I want to make sure their schedule doesn't get off track. But I will be watching the Houston Rockets playoff game later today. And then I'll be watching the Democratic National Convention because I care about it. So follow me if you will, and make sure that you share the video. And remember, wear your mask, practice social distancing, wash your hands, and at the end of the day, do something kind for yourself and do something kind for somebody else. Thank you guys for being a part of Chalk Talk. I'll see you next week. Have a great